Yeah, Mourinho has become such a really integral, important player for Arsenal. And I think you can clearly see he's disappointed in the fact that they know they can perform better. However, he's been really reasonable in the way he's analysing that game. I think they kind of expected to get a point going into this. But look, I just think they needed to pick up the intensity if they were ever going to actually create more chances. And I think that was the thing. I didn't think they created as many clear-cut chances as they normally do. So I think it was a really different game for Arsenal tonight.
Have you been surprised by Mourinho's goal output and sort of how much of an attacking threat he is for Arsenal?
Yeah, it surprised me. It really did, because I don't see him as that player. I really didn't. When he came to the club, I felt he was more of a player that would be controlling in a deeper role. And I think it's like what Mikel's done to Kai Havertz, who we don't see too often, kind of developed into a different player. He's done the same thing here.
Interesting now, Theo, isn't it? Because if Gyökeres is fit, if Havertz is on his way back fit, Gabriel Jesus back on the bench today, where does Mourinho fit into this team?
I think he's more trusted in the big games. I do. I think he's a player that you know what you're going to get. You know exactly the kind of game you're going to face. And he's got so much more experience in these games. I think Gyökeres will be more an impact player in the big games.
Yeah.
I do. I really do see that now. I just think he trusts him a lot more. And I think Gyökeres will probably do him a lot of good just to visually watch on the outside. Yeah, if he wanted to play, I understand that. However, I think he'll learn a lot from what Mourinho does and try and change his game.
So you think he would be starting Mourinho ahead of Gyökeres?
I can see that happening a lot more often than, yeah.
You agree?
No.
I don't know. I don't, because they've been crying out for a striker.
Yeah.
So, I think Mourinho brings that stability in there. He brings that extra defensive body, almost like a false nine. But they've been searching for that goal scorer, man. That's why they spent that money. You need to have that brother on the pitch. If he's fit and firing, you got to have him out there, because I do agree with you that Mourinho gives them a different kind of problem for the opposition. But you need your big hitters out there, man. And Gyökeres was bought to provide goals in big moments. That's what he was there for. That's why I was saying he's fuming with Timber.
So what if Havertz is fit then? Who's starting then?
That's Arteta's job, isn't it?
But they're very different, aren't they? They're very different types.
Yeah.
I suppose if you want to put them in a box, Havertz is probably a little bit more.
Well, there you go.
That
for me, that's the beauty of Arsenal squad. This is the best squad they've had since the Invincibles. For me, when you look at them and you look at the players they've got in each position, they've got high quality players. It's not, okay, I've got a young lad who's coming in and he's this or he's that. These are seasoned professionals at the highest level. We're talking about Mourinho, who was at the Euros with Spain. Then you've got Havertz, who's won the Champions League at the club, and you've got Gyökeres, who's won the Golden Shoe last year. So these are the guys who are vying for one spot. Then you've got the wingers, the amount of options they've got there. I think all in all, when you analyse Arsenal now, they have acquired themselves an amazing squad that can challenge on all fronts. They are probably, when you analyse other teams, they're looking at Arsenal as the standard now and going, I don't think that's happened in the last maybe 15 or 20 years. Theo, you could correct me if I'm wrong as a former Arsenal player, but to me, when I look at them, I think the expectation is that they are the standard and they're being hunted now. The expectation of them winning the Premier League is probably a collective sort of feeling, which is again probably the first time it's really happened, where we're looking at Manchester City, we're looking at Liverpool, we're looking at Chelsea and going, Chelsea are a surprise package this season. The expectation wasn't for them to be challenging. So I think looking at Arsenal, they are in perfect prime position with all of the changes. We talked about Gabriel and Saliba today. The two centre-halves come in, they do well. So there really is no excuses in regards to Arsenal's capabilities this year. Now it's time for them to deliver, but it will be a similar thing now or next year.
Would you swap this squad for anyone else's?
No, I just wouldn't. I think Chelsea, I'm trying to mould like Arsenal a couple of years ago. I feel like they are in that process. I wouldn't change the squad for anyone. I think the options he has, we spoke about on numerous occasions, they're all testing each other, they all challenge each other in a really competitive, strong, positive way. I think there's plenty of positivity coming out of the club constantly, except from Mikel Arteta. He sets the start every day. I just think for me, Arsenal, they need to be winning games like this though, when you're going 10 men. We were saying they've got the best squad. Well, go and show me in these games when you're against 10 men to win. But having said that, they've just kept them at bay. So they will be disappointed, I understand that, but we're talking about the best squad right now that are trying to challenge Chelsea with 10 men. not quite enough today for me. But look, they won't be they'll be disappointing result. However, they got a point.
Is it unfair, Daniel, to say that Arsenal might have gambled a little bit more in pursuit of that winning goal?
I think that going back to maybe our careers, being on the pitch playing against 10 men, right? It's a gift and a curse because you're expected to win. You feel like, okay, it's our day now. We were going up against 10 men, but in a way it can be more difficult because you either are calm and patient, which is what Arsenal were today, but then there's not that intensity to speed things up. And you talk about 8 shots, you would expect there to be more shots, but there are far less shots up from outside the box nowadays than there were when we were playing. So maybe people would have been taking longer range shots, whereas now it's more of a methodical approach in that this is our way of playing. We're going to play it wide, we're going to have overlaps, we're going to make, 1-2s, this, that and the third, and try and break you down in the way we would break down the mannequins in training, effectively. So yes, you could argue that Arsenal should have maybe thrown a little bit more at them and gone a bit more gung-ho, but as the manager said in the press conference, it's that in transition, Chelsea were still dangerous, and Robert Sanchez was really good on those crosses, coming to collect them and throwing them out. But I would have anticipated Arsenal to create more chances within that in open play for sure.
But 13 games in, and after a really difficult week for Arsenal as well, they find themselves 5 points clear. Had they found the winning goal, would have been 7. And I'm guessing they would have taken that, Theo, wouldn't they, at the start?
Absolutely, and as well. And when you look at the Liverpool where they are in the league, and they were probably favourites to win it at the start. Yes, of course. I think they would have looked at this table right now and absolutely taken that, of course. But look, you need to be careful, Manchester City. You're not quite sure. They're not consistent enough in this moment in time. However, yes, I think the goal tally is exceptional. I think they're playing a level with a lot of players that haven't been available at times. So look, I think in this moment in time, Arsenal are sitting really well.
For context, this stage last season, Arsenal actually had 25 points and found themselves in second place, and Liverpool led the way with 34. So there was an opportunity, arguably, for Arsenal to have really put a serious distance between themselves and the rest and take advantage of some of the frailties that we've seen elsewhere. Is that an argument?
Today was a day for them to go ahead and continue in how they've been performing, which has been dominant. And going up against 10 men, I do believe going home now, they are gutted about it. I would be. We as professionals and probably on the coaching side of things, you could argue we take a point. When you go after the statistical analysis and you go, okay, cool, this number would get us the league, so this is a great point today. But that doesn't negate the fact that I'm still going home thinking, we've played against 10 men, we've played against Chelsea, a direct rival. The opportunity is here to create a bit more distance. They've not taken that. Chelsea are going home laughing, very, very happy, with big smiles on their faces, knowing they've got away with one today.
One of the marquee matches of the season in the Premier League, Arsenal and Chelsea, just seconds ago, wrapping up at Stamford Bridge, a 1-1 draw between 2 of the top 3 teams in the table in England. Welcome in to our studio with an instant reaction alongside Ian Joy. I am Stefano Fusaro, and we see here a matchup that was important for the table, obviously, but Arsenal getting that 1 point. Now have a 5-point lead over Manchester City. Chelsea 6 points back of their London rivals. And now, Ian, one of the crackers, one of the best matches that we've seen this season so far in the Premier League, and these two teams that were clearly coming in motivated, both with a little bit of, I would guess, excitement to get into this match and start finding ways to start moving up the table for Chelsea and for Arsenal to stay at the very top.
Yeah, listen, more often than not, we never really celebrate draws. I thought this was one of the best Premier League games of the season, and obviously the red card in the first half made it interesting. Many people were saying that's going to ruin the spectacle. I thought the spectacle got even better. I think the game plan for Maresca at halftime really was intriguing to me, making some really interesting substitutions. And then Arsenal trying to play their game, just struggling to really get that momentum, even though their effort was there, their desire was there, their willingness to go forward was clearly there. I just thought both teams just trying to find a way to win the game was the perfect result. And at the end of the day, I would say a draw was probably a fair result as well. But this game had it all. I mean, it was a brilliant performance, and the referee's performance was interesting. But overall, I think both teams really went for it. It was a juggernaut of a game.
What did you make of that red card in the first half with Moises Caicedo? It was a difficult challenge. I know that sometimes you look at some of these challenges and you say maybe the game's got a bit soft. What did you think think of the red card, and how did it affect?
Yeah, I'm glad you're telling it to me. That is a bit of a soft decision. Listen, there was a time where this would not have been a red card, but I think nowadays, anytime you see the studs on the shin or on the ankle in the way that it was due from Caicedo, then eventually you will see that red card being given. I think Anthony Taylor provided the yellow card because he didn't quite see exactly how the contact was made. It happens so quickly for officials and for players out there. So it happens really quickly. He clearly missed it, but caught the collision. So he gave the yellow card. But first ever red card coming there from Moises Caicedo in the Premier League in his 130th appearance. Never good for him, never good for the game. We would have expected that to have maybe made it a bit more defensive-minded from Chelsea. But let's not face any facts other than the fact that Chelsea are an aggressive team this year. That's 7 red cards they've picked up in 15 matches, their last 15 matches, which is an insane record. And I think this obviously kind of changed the game in a way, but not as much as I thought it would have done. I thought it would have been completely more defensive-minded from Chelsea, and it wasn't. It was more offensive, more counter-attack, and it was exciting.
It surely was. And the fans at Chelsea, at Stamford Bridge, were clearly shaken by that red card. And because we have somebody at Stamford Bridge,
let's do it.
James Benz. Let's go chat to him because he was at the game. James, you're still there at Stamford Bridge. Tell us, how was the atmosphere and the moment where the red card happens? What happened there with the fans as far as that red card and Chelsea getting back into this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think even the most one-eyed Chelsea fan would have to have admitted that was a red. But I thought Ian hit the nail on the head. The 70s, you can't tackle like that anymore. And even the Chelsea fans who are always riled up by Anthony Taylor, I think you didn't hear too many complaints beyond the initial reaction of mock incredulity. I think for them the frustration was probably more that someone like Piero Hincapié or even Victor Gyökeres at the death didn't follow Caicedo for an early bath, because this was a blood and thunder game, to put it mildly.
Hey James, let's get your reaction overall from the game, because to me this was one of the best games that we have seen in the Premier League this season. And I think sometimes when you get an early red card, you never quite know what to expect. But actually, both teams really went for it. Chelsea, you got to give them a ton of credit. They tried to play the counter-attacking. They created some chances. They had more shots on target than Arsenal did in the second period. Your overall reaction from the game?
Overwhelmingly, like, Chelsea end up in credit. Huge performance, especially down to 10 men. You know, kind of going back to your stats, you always wonder if they're quite familiar with this now, and they know exactly what to do. There were so many times where I was really impressed by their courage. One Arsenal corner that Saka was taking, they had 3 players up on the edge of the halfway line ready to counter-attack, and actually Robert Sanchez should have got the ball out to them quicker. So I think equally, though, the fact of the matter is we end this game kind of with Chelsea being where they were beforehand, and they might just feel like this was an opportunity to close the gap on Arsenal that slipped away. Arsenal were poor. They were so far off their best level. They looked like a team that had expended too much energy against Tottenham, against Bayern Munich, and were maybe there to be got at. My question, the big question I have coming out of this game is, could Chelsea have played that way for 90 minutes with 11 men? If they did, they'd have won that, and they'd have won it well. As is, I just think they couldn't quite hold on, and they couldn't quite push home for the winner late on. So a draw may be a fair result to punish Caicedo's moment of madness.
I'm not sure if it was your dodgy internet here at Stamford Bridge, but did you say that you didn't think that Arsenal were up to the task in that second half? I don't think they had maybe they weren't very clinical in front of goal, but I still thought that they had a pretty decent performance against a Chelsea side that, look, has made their life very difficult in this match.
Yeah, sorry about the internet. Turns out the world's media are here and they're all filing match reports at the exact same time. I was quite unimpressed with Arsenal. I think they really sort of struggled for ideas. It didn't help, of course, that 3-4 of their defenders ended up on yellow cards, so they were always continually on the brink themselves, and they had to play a bit cautiously. And I thought that caution started to enter their game. There were moments when Ødegaard came on the pitch where they had a little bit more guile. I think mostly I would say this is more about how well Chelsea defended, how strong they were in the duels. Reece James, man of the match by a country mile, one of the best performances I've ever seen, and I'm a huge Reece James fan, one of his best performances. But yeah, I thought Arsenal just lacked a little bit of oomph, but it's fine. That's fine if you then come away from that game with a point, with a 5-point lead at the top of the Premier League. and you have Victor Gyökeres coming back. You'll have Martin Ødegaard potentially back in the 11 as well. So plenty of options, and maybe William Saliba too. We do have to say they were without Saliba and Gabriel, and no shame in coming to a ground like this without your 2-star centre-backs and getting a point.
Yeah, well said, James. And you touched upon a very important player that actually had a real impact game today in Reece James in midfield for Chelsea. I thought he was outstanding. I'm intrigued to see what everybody else thinks about his performance. Player of the match performance as far as I am concerned. He's really slotted in well in that midfield area. And actually we had 2 England internationals going head-to-head with Declan Rice going up against him. Your overall thoughts watching him in person, Reece James from midfield, what impressed you? What could he do better? And what did you see in comparison against Declan Rice today?
So tactically shrewd Reece James. You'd see moments where he'd drop in between the defenders, make a back three and build up. He could man mark Rice in one passage of play. Of course, his sort of technical ability to spread play was excellent. Rice had moments. There was this one phenomenal tackle on Pedro Neto, who thought he'd skinned him in the penalty area, and Rice just sticks one of those telescopic legs out to save the danger. I thought he was someone that also looked like he was tiring a little bit. There was definitely a moment in the second half where Arteta was growing frustrated with the slightly loopy, slightly loose balls across field that Rice was playing. So he tired, but in flashes you saw why he's one of the best midfielders in the world.
Yeah, and we talk about Reece James. Reece James has never been, his quality's never been a doubt. It's been his availability and not being around because of injuries. When he's on the pitch and when he's fit, he's been one of the better midfielder or right backs, however you want to call it, in the Premier League. I want to talk real quick on Arsenal, just one more thing, because if you would have told them at the beginning of this week, they would have had 2 wins and a draw with the matches that they had, and you wouldn't have had Saliba and Gabriel in this match against Chelsea, they would have taken it. So I think they have to be happy after these past 3 games this week.
100%. The performance you might not be happy with, but the result you would. We have to say they had played 1 Premier League game without Saliba and Gabriel since Saliba sort of came into the team in the summer of 2022, and that was against Southampton, one of the worst teams ever in the Premier League. They adapted to it really well. I was really impressed with how players like Mosquera, Zubamendi, before he came off, was doing such a smart job of shielding the back four, and they sort of played within themselves quite shrewdly. And look, from a points perspective, this is ideal. They've played, as far as I can see, every one of the big 6. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they've done a lot of those games away from home, so they've set themselves up really nicely for the run in. The players are coming back. Arteta said that Saliba shouldn't be out for too long, so things are going pretty well for Arsenal, it must be said. Yeah, well said, James. I think it's important, and champions tend to find a way to get results, whether it's a draw or picking up important points in a victory. It wasn't the victory, it was the point. But it almost looked like it was going to go in a different direction, the way the referee started this game. Yellow card happy in the first 30 minutes, by the way, Anthony Taylor. Anyone who follows you on social media can tell that you weren't too happy with his performance in the opening part of the game. None of the decisions felt wrong, absolutely wrong. But you can, as a referee, you can set the tone for the game. And to me, it felt like a game where the two sides, especially just before half-time, were just hunting fouls on each other. Like, what you don't want is a game where each team isn't really playing to kick the ball in the other team's net. They're playing to try and draw a foul that they can win. And that would be my criticism of him. I don't think it was one of those games where you sort of say, this decision he made was a howler. But maybe he could have set a different tempo for this game. And I wonder if that's a question he'll ask himself.
James Bench, thanks for joining us just minutes after the end of the match between Chelsea and Arsenal. Yeah, go and enjoy the dodgy Wi-Fi, will you? Yeah.
Thank you. Can I go inside now?
Yeah, please go inside. Get yourself a pint.
Go get warm. Here are the lineups that we saw in this match. And interesting, obviously, the biggest issue, obviously, with Arsenal not having their 2-star center backs, and you heard James mention it right there. Yep. They've only played 1 Premier League match since they've both been at the club without both of them. This was the second one. Yeah, but yet again, it's another great performance, I think, defensively from Arsenal. I know, obviously, they'll be disappointed that they conceded a goal. Very, very good goal at that as well. Corner kick comes in from Reece James, and I think from Chalobah, it was a very good header, very difficult to defend. But the actual performance, maybe the weaker link was Calafiore, and that's probably why he was replaced, sitting on a yellow card as well. Nkapia and Mosquera, I mean, Arsenal are doing a fabulous job right now of being able to replace players and put another one in to just basically do the job as if no one was really missing. It's incredible. Midfield was a battle. Zubamendi got taken off in this game, and at one point I thought, okay, this is really interesting. Is he in the game? Is he not in the game? I think it was very interesting to see how they made that change as well. I do love the midfield battle as well. Caicedo will be very disappointed to have picked up that red card, but I think Chelsea will be
relatively happy with the overall performance and absolutely delighted they ended up picking up a point. But this was a real fabulous Premier League performance. It really was. Anthony Taylor was involved in the game, as James pointed out there. Yellow card happy. Looked like he had a brand new yellow card. But to me in particular, I think this was an outstanding performance from both teams. And I wouldn't be saying anything less than that from Arsenal as well. This is not an easy game. Playing against 10 players is tough. Arsenal will be happy with the point as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it really did change the game, not only because of Caicedo having to leave. Esteban then has to come out of the game because of the tactical changes he needs to make with Caicedo off and only 10 men on the pitch. So it definitely did change things. One person I have to talk about is Marino. Every time he gets an opportunity, Ian, every time he gets a chance, he scores, he does well for Arsenal.
10 Premier League goals, 7 of them coming from headers as well. Maybe I've had more, but Sanchez had an outstanding performance for Chelsea in goal as well. But what a great game that was.
Mikel Arteta has made it clear that Arsenal will need to unleash their complete player against Bayern Munich. The Gunners host the German champions at the Emirates Stadium on Wednesday, and one man in particular could be decisive. Ebereki Eze, described as a very complete player by teammate Mikel Merino, is emerging as one of Arsenal's most dangerous weapons ahead of their Champions League clash with Bayern. The 27-year-old announced himself in North London with a stunning hat-trick in his first derby since arriving in a £67.5 million move from Crystal Palace. His 3 brilliant goals dismantled Tottenham, and truthfully, he could have scored even more. Merino believes every one of Arsenal's 8 summer signings has lifted the squad's level, helping the team build a 6-point lead at the top of the Premier League. But Wednesday's matchup is different. Bayern Munich, the reigning Bundesliga champions, represent the toughest test yet for Arteta's side. Speaking after the win over Spurs, Merino praised Eze's qualities and hinted at the impact he could have in such a high-stakes European battle. We've brought in a lot of players who can make a difference. But you can see that other teams have spent big as well, the Spain international said. Individual brilliance can win matches, sure, but in the end, it's the team that matters. If you have great players who don't connect, that's a problem. The good thing about this group is that everyone thinks about the team first. When asked about Eze specifically, Merino didn't hesitate. I think he's incredibly complete. He can dribble, he can pass, and his technical quality is outstanding. In Spain, we always talk about players who can connect with others. He has that naturally. He grew up with that instinct to link play, move the ball, and build relationships on the pitch. He also has the mindset to get involved, demand the ball, and influence the game. At the same time, he's strong, he can take players on, and he can finish. He's a truly complete signing. Merino also touched on how the modern game often reduces players to simple numbers. These days everyone judges players by goals and assists, that's just how it is. But as footballers, we see the deeper qualities he brings, the technique, the movement, the intelligence. Even in training, you can tell immediately how special he is. Yes, he's scoring goals, but he's much more than that. He's an exceptional player, and we're incredibly lucky to have him. He can play in several positions and adapt to different systems. He's been a huge addition for Arsenal. Beyond the technical qualities, Merino believes Eze's attitude, and the healthy competition within the squad, will be crucial in Arsenal's title push. You can hear the calm in Ebereki's voice and see it in the way he carries himself. He's confident, grounded, and every morning we sit together in the sauna at the training ground and talk about everything, he added with a smile. He's a great guy, already fully integrated, and we need players like him. Competition is fierce. There's so much quality in this squad. That's exactly what the manager wanted, as many top players as possible, all ready to play. It makes his decisions tough, choosing who starts and who doesn't, but it also pushes every one of us to give our best in every session. And that's why we're improving as a team. As Arsenal prepare for Bayern's arrival, Arteta is facing one of the most delicate balancing acts of the season. The squad is healthy, competition is fierce, and expectations have never been higher. But behind the scenes, there is a growing sense that Eze's versatility and calm presence may be essential against a Bayern side known for controlling the tempo in big European nights. Arteta himself has hinted at Eze's importance without naming him directly. After the Tottenham victory, the manager spoke about the need for players who can break pressure, dictate rhythm, and stay composed when the game becomes chaotic. Those inside the club believe those comments were aimed at Eze as much as anyone. The coaching staff has been particularly impressed by how quickly he has adapted to Arsenal's positional play structure, a system that demands far more tactical discipline than what he was used to at Crystal Palace. Analysts at the club point to his growing influence not only in the final third, but also in build-up phases, where his ability to glide past pressure could help Arsenal bypass Bayern's aggressive midfield line. There is also an awareness that Bayern's fullbacks tend to push high, leaving spaces between the lines. Iza's skill set, sharp turns, deceptive acceleration, and precise final balls, could be exactly what Arteta needs to exploit those gaps. Outside the club, pundits have already started circling Wednesday's match as a defining moment for the £67.5 million signing. Some believe that if Eze can impose himself on a Champions League quarter-final against Bayern Munich, it will confirm his arrival among Europe's elite creative players. Former players have echoed that sentiment. Several ex-Arsenal figures, speaking on television over the weekend, highlighted the need for someone who can change the temperature of the match with a moment of calm or an unexpected burst of creativity. Eze, they argued, is one of the few in the squad capable of both. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich come into the match with their own confidence. Their midfield trio has been one of the most dominant in Europe this season, and they have shown a repeated ability to suffocate opponents early. That dynamic is precisely why Arteta may lean on Eze's composure. When the game tightens, Arsenal will need a player capable of slowing it down, protecting the ball, and finding solutions in tight spaces. Within Arsenal's dressing room, Mourinho's praise reflects a broader consensus. Senior players have reportedly been struck by Eze's humility and work ethic, qualities that have helped him integrate seamlessly into a squad that already had strong internal chemistry. Staff members describe him as someone who never forces the game and lets the match come to him, characteristics that could prove invaluable in a high-tension Champions League tie. As kickoff approaches, the narrative surrounding the match has shifted. What began as a test of Arsenal's resilience has quietly become a spotlight on whether Eze can elevate them in Europe the same way he has in the Premier League. For Arteta, the equation is simple. If Arsenal are to overcome Bayern, they will need more than intensity. They will need control. They will need creativity. And increasingly, they will need the completeness Eze brings to every phase of the pitch. Whether he starts in a wide role as a floating midfielder, or even as an interior playmaker, the expectation is the same. Eze will have to find the spaces others cannot, and influence the game in ways that statistics alone will not capture. The stakes are high, the opponent is formidable, and the spotlight is intense. But within the walls of London Coney, the belief is growing that this is exactly the kind of stage Ebereki Eze was signed for. Martin Odegaard is nearing a return to action after suffering a medial collateral ligament injury in Arsenal's 2-0 win over West Ham earlier in October. Yet, 3.5 years after Mikel Arteta named him captain, the Norwegian finds himself in an unfamiliar position. His place in the starting lineup is no longer guaranteed. For the first time since joining the club permanently from Real Madrid in August 2021, there is real debate over whether he remains an automatic choice for Arteta's 11. Odegaard, now 26, has been central to Arsenal's resurgence under Arteta, the conductor who shaped the team's rhythm through some of their most fluid football. But this season, the Gunners have been forced to navigate long stretches without their captain, first due to a shoulder issue that kept him out of 4 matches in September, and then because of a knee collision with West Ham's Crescencio Somerville that sidelined him again. And during his absence, something significant happened. Ebereki Eze stepped into the spotlight. Eze's sensational hat-trick in the North London Derby has complicated the picture. Now thriving in a central role, the England international has given Arsenal a different kind of presence around the edge of the box. A blend of unpredictability, directness, and two-footed confidence that opponents struggle to contain. He may not control games with the same metronomic precision as Odegaard, but he offers a spark, a willingness to take risks at moments when Arsenal need a jolt of creativity. After such a standout performance against Tottenham, it feels almost impossible to imagine Arteta leaving Eze out. The manager has always had a soft spot for players riding a wave of confidence, and Eze is currently surfing at full height. There was a similar situation back in September, when Mikel Merino was handed a start against Manchester City after scoring 4 times in 2 games for Spain, including a hat-trick against Turkey. Arteta doesn't hesitate to reward form. Eze has carried that form onto the international stage as well, recently scoring a stunning goal for England in a 2-0 win over Serbia in the World Cup qualifiers at Wembley. Though he can play on the left, it has always been clear that Arteta brought him to the Emirates to operate in midfield. And with Declan Rice and Martin Zubamendi near untouchable in the double pivot, the odds of Eze and Odegaard consistently starting together seem slim. That leaves Odegaard in an unfamiliar position. He needs minutes to rebuild sharpness, yet Arsenal's medical team won't rush him. The plan is likely to ease him back through short substitute appearances before restoring him to larger roles. But even once fully fit, Odegaard faces genuine competition, because ease has shifted the landscape. His arrival has raised the team's ceiling, and his performances have earned him the right to keep his place. Before the dismantling of Tottenham, Ease had scored only twice for Arsenal, one against Port Vale in the Carabao Cup and another versus his former club Crystal Palace, a clever finish that sealed victory. Now, with 5 goals across all competitions, he sits just one behind Odegaard's total from last season, when the captain made 45 appearances. Odegaard's 2023-24 numbers were outstanding: 11 goals, 12 assists, influence written across every competition. That is the standard he must match again if he wants to reclaim his spot, because Ease is hungry, confident, and eager to impress ahead of next summer's World Cup. Arteta will insist that Arsenal need both players at their best if they are to meet their ambitions in the months ahead. And with Kai Havertz also working his way back to full fitness, potentially slotting into midfield behind marquee striker Victor Gyökeres, the battle for places has never been fiercer at the Emirates. For Odegaard, the message is clear: he must rise to the challenge. His leadership and quality remain unquestioned, but he can no longer rely on reputation alone. If he embraces the competition and fights his way back into the side, his return could push Arsenal to even greater heights. And if the team has already reached this level without several key figures, the potential for what comes next may be even greater. Inside the club, staff members are quietly acknowledging that Arsenal are entering a new phase, one where no player, not even the captain, is immune to tactical evolution. Arteta has spent the past 2 seasons building a squad capable of sustaining pressure across multiple competitions, and the emergence of Ease is a sign that the manager's long-term planning is beginning to bear fruit. Depth is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. But with depth comes difficult decisions. Arteta has always valued balance in midfield, and the contrasting profiles of Odegaard and Ease force him to reconsider what type of midfield best suits the team's ambitions in Europe and the Premier League. The technical control and spatial awareness that Odegaard brings have defined Arsenal's identity under Arteta. Conversely, Ease's dynamism, physical presence, and unpredictable touches give Arsenal a new dimension, especially against teams that sit deep or defend aggressively in central areas. This internal shift has also caught the attention of analysts and former players. Several pundits have begun to question whether the captaincy should guarantee a place in the lineup, especially at a club with ambitions of challenging for the Champions League. Others argue that Odegaard's leadership is too valuable to sideline, pointing to the standards he sets in training and his influence over younger players. Those debates are already spilling into the media, and they will only intensify as the season progresses. There is also the tactical question of whether Arteta might eventually experiment with a system that accommodates both Ease and Odegaard, something he briefly attempted earlier in the season during the win over West Ham. But with Rice and Zubimendi forming an almost impenetrable midfield pairing, any reshuffle risks destabilizing the defensive structure that has made Arsenal one of the most resilient teams in the league. The manager has hinted that he is open to adjustments, but only if they enhance the team's overall cohesion. For Odegaard himself, the challenge is as much psychological as it is physical. He has worked hard to cultivate an image of calm authority, a leader who raises the level of those around him through clarity and consistency. Now he must show that he can adapt, compete, and respond to adversity. His teammates still speak of him with admiration, describing him as one of the most studious and detail-oriented players at London Coney. They believe that once he regains full rhythm, he will naturally reassert his influence. Yet even they acknowledge that the landscape has shifted. One senior player privately remarked that, "The team is different now, Ease has changed what we can do in the final third." That sentiment reflects not a lack of faith in Odegaard, but an understanding that Arsenal have evolved while he has been sidelined. For Arteta, the ideal scenario is straightforward: a fully fit Odegaard competing with a fully confident Ease, creating a level of internal competition that lifts the entire squad. The manager often speaks about the need for healthy tension among his players, pressure that keeps standards high without fracturing unity. The arrival of Victor Gyökeres, combined with the recovery of Havertz, only amplifies that dynamic. Arsenal's season will almost certainly hinge on these midfield decisions. With Champions League knockout matches approaching and the Premier League title race tightening, Arteta must decide not only who starts, but what kind of identity he wants his team to carry into the defining months of the campaign. The next few weeks will reveal whether Odegaard's return sparks a resurgence or a battle for relevance. If he manages to reclaim his place, It could serve as a reminder of why Arteta trusted him with the armband in the first place. If he struggles, it will underline how rapidly Arsenal are progressing, and how little room there is for sentiment at the highest level. Either way, the captain's response will shape not just his future, but the trajectory of a team that believes it is on the brink of something significant.